Angela Rayner, yes, she's got big plans. She's going to team up with the Conservative Dominic Grieve to form a new council on Islam.
Of course, Dominic Grieve stood against the Conservative Party in the 2019 general election as an independent, but that's by the by.
Yes, a few of you commented on the fact we called him a heavyweight.
It was a big beast, but I think it's fair to say that he parted ways with the Conservative Party some time ago.
Left, is it? Yes.
But it's expected to have 16 members, this council, all in all, and it's going to focus on what they say is a rise of Islamophobia in the UK.
Yeah, and one of the key issues here, one of the sticking points here, is the definition of Islamophobia. What exactly does it mean? Does it mean a fear of Islam? Does it mean a fear of Muslims? Does it mean criticism of Islam as a doctrine, as an ideology, as a political ideology even?
Well, this is the problem.
Does it mean objecting to the hijab or the burqa?
Because Islam is a religion. It's different from Judaism. The Jewish people are a people. That's an ethnicity.
Yeah.
Whereas Islam, it's an ideology. It's a religion. I mean, I suppose you can have Islamophobia in the same way that you can have Christianophobia. But if we had a definition of Christianophobia, would we lock Richard Dawkins up behind bars? Would we say that the God Delusion could not be published as a book because this offends Christians? Clearly, that's palpably insane. Of course, you should have the right to offend a religion. You should have the right to criticise a religion. And I wonder if this
But penalising someone, for example, for the fact that they happen to be Muslim, well, that's already illegal.
Yes.
That's already an offence.
And there's a difference in these terms,
Anti-Muslim hatred is picking on someone because they are a Muslim.
Yes.
Very different from someone saying, I don't like Islam.
Exactly, and there's the difference. You attack an idea or you attack an individual. Any free society, you would think, people should have the right to attack an idea.
I hope Angela Rayner knows what she's getting into here, because very intelligent people have looked at this issue, have looked at the definition, have thought about the issues around whether we'll be bringing in a blasphemy law through the back door. They've looked at the complexities. Does Angela Rayner really gauge how tricky this issue is and the potential repercussions on free speech?
I'm not sure that there is going to be any way that you can deliver a so-called Islamophobia definition.
I mean, I don't particularly like the word.
No, I don't like the word. I mean, I think the Conservative Party refused to use the word Islamophobia.
You're right.
And were using for a time the term anti-Muslim bigotry, because that can pinpoint when people, outrageously discriminate against individuals and people.
Yeah.
But the term Islamophobia, too often, can be taken to mean criticism or mockery of ideas.
Which is ridiculous. Dr. Adrian Hilton is with us, Research Fellow at Buckingham University. Thank you very much for joining us on this one. We've just been chatting away about this. A very complicated issue. I mean, do you think Angela Rayner with this new council are going to get it right?
It remains to be seen. I want to push back on something, though, very, very sensitively, if I may. I'm pleased that Dominic Grieve is chairing this. He's a man I've known for 20 years. He is cognizant of the theological, religious dimensions of it, as well as the political and sociological. He's not a pushover. He's a deeply thinking man who is aware also, I might add, of the more malign undertones that run through some ethnic minority groups. In fact, he's criticised them in the past for endemic corruption and got into trouble for it. So he isn't naive about the complexities here.
But Adrian, just on that point, is it true that he wrote the foreword to the previous definition of Islamophobia, which had quite a lot of problems?
Yes, he wrote the foreword to it, welcoming it as a contribution to a debate.
Okay.
If you write a foreword for something, you're not necessarily agreeing with all the content of it. He welcomed the debate, was it 5 or 6 years ago? The debate's moved on, clearly. There's been pushback from Sikhs, there's been pushback from free speech advocates and educationalists. The debate's moved on. So in a way, Angela Rayner, by convening this council, is acknowledging that the APPG definition needs to move on as well, or in fact be retracted somehow.
It's difficult, though, is it not? Because the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn adopted this definition as the party's own definition of Islamophobia. And so if this council's going to say, well, the world's moved on from this, this was clearly a bad piece of work or an inappropriate piece of work in a free and liberal society, then the Labour Party is going to need to look at its own internal definitions and rules.
Yes, and that's probably what will happen, for the simple reason that the debate does move on. When we know more, I mean, for example, Islam being spread by the sword, for example, the Sikhs have pushed back on that significantly. It is their own history to say that they experienced subjugation, that Islam persecuted them and spread by the sword. So Labour is already wrestling with these complex dynamics. And I just want to welcome as well the fact that this council is happening at all is a sign that things have moved on. The easiest thing for Labour to have done would have been to adopt the APP definition and introduce it into statute law.
But Adrian, they could potentially strengthen the definition, couldn't they? They could say that, I don't know, being offensive about the wearing of a burqa or is now illegal.
It depends, of course, who Angela Rayner puts on this council. There are 16 members of it. Dominic Grieve isn't going to agree to chair a council of 16 censorious-minded Muslims who all want more Sharia creep. He's not going to do that. If this council has a representative, for example, from the Free Speech Association or a Sikh and other scholars who are aware of the complexities, it could be a good thing. Don't prejudge the outcome of this council, not least because if it's something preordained, if people sense it's preordained, it's not going to work. There'll be pushback on it. There will be a demand for a Sikh council to push back on it. And Angela Rayner will be aware of those sorts of things.
No, that's a really, really good point. I hope that they put some pretty fervent atheists on the panel, as well as those that represent religious minorities.
That's a very important point. There ought to be somebody from the National Secular Society on this as well. And if it's convened in a way that is balanced, good could come of it.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I still am a little worried, but I hope you're right that they'll be sensible about this and they'll get all voices around the table. Dr. Adrian Hilton, fantastic to have you on the channel, research fellow at the Buckingham University.
Well, we're going to discuss this further with the founder of the Oxford Institute for British Islam, Dr. Taj Hargey. Dr. Taj, thanks for joining us. There are some real concerns over what any move towards a potential definition of Islamophobia could do to a liberal society.
Absolutely. I don't think Islamophobia is actually the correct term. The correct term would be anti-Muslim prejudice. Islamophobia is a catch-all thing. Not all Muslims are, it's not a racist thing. You have black Muslims, you have white Muslims, you have brown Muslims, whatever you have. And this idea of Islamophobia is just a catch-all phrase to prevent a real free speech. I, as a Muslim, encourage and welcome criticisms and dialogue honestly about my faith. This idea you can't talk about someone wearing a hijab or a niqab or someone with a big beard or whatever the case may be, that's not anti-Muslim. Everyone has the right to express their views. We live in a society that lauds free speech and thinks it is our historic rights from Magna Carta onwards to have this idea of free expression. And we don't need in the 21st century to novel this, to restrict it, and to make it more difficult for people to have honest dialogue. In fact, when we don't have frank discussions, we have antipathy, hostility, and resentment building up. And in fact, we need a pressure valve, a release valve. People can discuss these things openly without being called a racist.
Sounds like you should be on this council. I mean, you have a very balanced. It sounds like you should be on this council to come up with this.
Well, we will never have people like me because firstly, I'm not a Labour man, and I don't care about that so much. I care about Muslims and being British, and I think it's important that we have people, as your previous speaker said, people who are willing to rock the boat. Now, Rayner and company, they will have their disciples and their devotees on this council, despite what your previous speaker said. They will have their disciples and their devotees, and I think we need honest, fearless people out there, and Muslims especially, people like myself. myself, but others as well, can say honestly and openly, listen, yes, there is anti-Muslim prejudice, there is anti-Muslim feeling in this country, and we need to firstly discover the roots. I mean, for example, who does most of the so-called violent terrorism in this country? It's not Sikhs, it's not Jews, it's not Hindus, it's Muslims. And we need to call a spade a spade. And I think this is the point here. So yes, if we want to address anti-Muslim resentment and hostility in this country, we Muslims must put up our hands first and say, listen, yes, we have done this, but this is not what our religion says. This is what fanatics and extremists say. And for example, during the Crusades, when people went in and slaughtered in the name of Christ, in the name of Christianity, was that because Jesus Christ told them so? No, they subverted the religion to say, listen, this is what Christianity is. So when these Islamic extremists and radicals come along and does these crazy things, we need to call them
Dr.
out.
Taj, you make your points very strongly. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Founder of the Oxford Institute for British Islam, Dr. Taj Hargey. Well, there you go. Let us know your thoughts.